some people are still quite narrow-minded when it comes down to Bitcoin mining. They just think about, oh, Chinese, mafia, Italian. They kind of stereotype the industry.
ESG is about the sustainability, obviously, but it's also about the community involvement. And HIVE has a very strong commitment to the communities that we work in Boden, which is where our biggest data center is located. It's a small community in the very north of Sweden.
Bitcoin is an energy-backed currency. And what I mean by that is when you look at an ASIC miner, right, it looks, it's about that big. It's like a loaf of bread, stainless steel, 300 microchips, ASICs, and fans, and each one is about 3 kilowatts. And so a hairdryer at home is about 1500 kilowatts. So it uses as much energy as like 2 hair dryers. It's got an inlet fan and an outlet fan. If you put your hand in front of the outlet fan, you'll feel warm air blowing. Okay. And when you buy these things, they're rated in something called efficiency. The most important thing is the efficiency. What do they measure it in? Joules per terahash.
One of the goals of the FinancialFox has always been demystify industry they are not really understood. And today we are demystifying Bitcoin mining. I'm having back on the show Aydin Kilic, CEO of HIVE Digital Technologies, with Johanna Thörnblad, country president of Sweden. Let's talk about the green challenge of Bitcoin mining. I'm wondering whether the Bitcoin spot ETF that just been approved is going to play a role in establishing standard for ESG practice in Bitcoin mining. And looking ahead into 2024, let's share some insight and views on the Bitcoin mining space. So data centers are basically the core of Bitcoin mining, and there is so much corporate responsibility that can be done to give back to the local communities and contribute to their developments. Before we get into the interview, I'm going to ask you a favor. I know that many of you are watching my interviews and maybe you are not part of our community yet. So what I'm going to ask you, if you could join our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, just not only to stay up to date with our news and interviews, but also to support the channel and allow us to go stronger and bring more great guests on the show so we can share amazing insight, we can dive deep into some specific topics, and I can assure you that you are going to have great content, amazing insight, and really powerful guests. Remember that any investment decision that you make, especially when it comes down to crypto, that is a very volatile industry, you need to do lots of research, you need to learn, you need to stay up to date. There are really fast developing, happening all the time. So, due diligence is the most important things in this space, and also take responsibility of your action. So, no financial advice, as I said, here on the FinancialFox YouTube channel. Hi, Aydin, Johanna, nice to have you on the show.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for having us.
So, Johanna, what are you doing with a Bitcoin mining company?
It's been a fantastic ride. I joined HIVE 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, actually. Then we just were really focusing on Sweden and Iceland. And since then, we've also built out big time in Canada. Of course, always renewable resources. So that's why we're in these cold climate areas. And I joined to be responsible for our expanding Swedish business. So it's been fantastic, really, starting out with data center focused on providing computer power for Bitcoin and Ethereum. And all of a sudden now, in the last 12 months, really focusing as well on diversifying into supporting AI with all the GPUs that we had acquired back in 2021 for Ethereum mining. And so, it's been a fantastic opportunity and still remains so, which is, 3 years later is fantastic to be able to say.
Well, I was fascinated when I met you and Aydin at the Bitcoin Amsterdam. I was fascinated by everything that you are doing. And, I think there is something very important that we should be doing, like people like myself and also the media, is really demystifying the Bitcoin mining industry, because the only thing that happens but actually isn't true. There is so much development and innovation that is actually happening in the industry, and that's why you know I wanted to have you on the show, and Aydin has been already, and he helped us to crack the matrix to understand the price where Bitcoin mining could be sustainable and all the elements that come into the space. But I really wanted to have you on to kind of dive deep into all these aspects about ESG, corporate responsibility, renewable energy, and then obviously we have all the AI aspect that I wanted Aydin to unpack for us. So can you explain a little bit about how the renewable energy are used and how they are making really Bitcoin mining more sustainable, tackling this energy consumption challenge or green challenge, let's call it that way?
So, for example, the biggest data center that we have in Sweden is located just 500 meters from the hydro plant in the city where we're located. And so we get all our energy basically from that center. And company-wide, it's clearly hydro energy that is the big power source for us. We also have some geothermal energy in Iceland, and there's some wind in the mix. But that is really our main power source.
So in terms of different renewable energies that has been used to power Bitcoin mining, if we have to kind of go through them and maybe tell which have been the most successful, which have been the most challenging one, and how do you think the future is gonna go, what would you say?
Well, one thing I just wanted to add to one of the good points Johanna made up is that the Boden facility is very close to the source of power generation. And when you think about energy broadly, there's two things you need to consider. Energy is expensive to transport and it's expensive to store, right? Energy is inherently lossy, right? And that's a physics term. When you send energy across a medium, you lose energy along the way. And therefore, utilities and countries, where is Sweden's primary demand of energy? It's in Stockholm, which is in the very south. Our data center is in the very north by the Arctic Circle. And so there's different energy regions in certain countries, right? Canada, US, what have you, Sweden. And broadly, you can source power close to the point of generation. Usually it's cheaper. Why? Because the utility company hasn't had to incur costs to transmit that energy to where your load is. And so that's something inherently positive about Bitcoin mining, which HIVE specifically acts upon, is we've generally set up our facilities in remote locations close to the point of generation of renewable energy. In New Brunswick, it's actually in a town called Grand Falls. You can actually see there's a hydro station nearby. So, in fact, in Iceland, you can see the geothermal plant. It looks like a giant space station with steam coming out of it when you're on the way to our facility. So this is where Bitcoin miners can help balance the grid, because they provide a stable source of revenue for power producers, because we want to run 24/7. And what's unique about our load is that you can vary it, and so we can reduce it on a moment's notice, as we do in Sweden. And we're the largest participant in the country of what they call demand response, right? Where when we get software signals from the national power utility company, we reduce our load. Why? Because during those times, they have peak demand from other clients and just the general populace that they're trying to serve. So you call that grid balancing. Now, I think you asked a little bit about the future, and I think the future kind of stems from that concept that I just explained. I think that there's going to be, an integration where facilities are more closer to the points of generation. And I think that the advancement of technology, where there will be, I don't know if corporate responsibility is the right word. We kind of consider it an ESG thing where we help with grid balancing, but there's a difference between ideas and talk and actually doing. And so Johanna's, team in Sweden has done a phenomenal job doing both the grid balancing. I think, Johanna, we started that 3 years ago.
2020, yeah. So the first data center to participate in that program. And to Aydin's point that, Bitcoin miners are such good participants because we have this steady consumption 24 hours a day, but we also have the possibility that few industries have in powering down our consumption. Within 5 seconds, we have to respond to 50% of the needed capacity that we've been asked to give up in 5 seconds. So we just automatically IT shut down the equipment that is needed for that. Within 30 seconds,
Wow.
we need to shut off that entire power consumption that has been called. And so this is a huge resource for the power grid, to balance it in hours where there's spike demand. And this is really part of the big green transition in Sweden and in many other countries, that we are depending more and more on electricity for our homes, our cars, industries, everything. And we want to go that way with this big green sustainable transition. And so then you need different types of participants to use the grid so that you can respond to these spike frequency peaks, if you will.
So tell me more about these initiatives and how HIVE is giving back to the local communities. I'm really curious about it. I know that you're doing some great stuff, but you should tell to all our viewers and followers, please.
Well, I think that ESG is about the sustainability, obviously, but it's also about the community involvement, and HIVE has a very strong commitment to the communities that we work in Boden, which is where our biggest data center is located. It's a small community in the very north of Sweden, and so hockey is really the big sport in town. And so we said, okay, how can we get involved in making the hockey team even more successful, if you will, bigger and more stable? And so we've gone into to do a big sponsorship there, really significant for the community. And so we're sponsoring not only the elite team, but also lots of youth teams. I think it's 12 teams now that are being able to have ice time and coaches and all the sort of the infrastructure around the hockey team, the hockey organization, Boden's Hockey. With that, we now have the HIVE Arena in the community of Boden in Sweden. So that's really exciting. And for example, I think getting the youth off the street and into the hockey arena to support the local team. So we said, okay, we sponsor the youth up to 19 years of age. They can go to the hockey team and support the matches without paying a ticket, and that way they're not wondering if they should go to the hockey team or go to the cinema or something like that. So, and all these things have been very, very welcome. But other things that we're doing that extremely exciting, and we're doing it in Canada and in Sweden, is, for example, reuse of the heat that our data centers are generating. And maybe Aydin can speak a little bit about what we're already doing in Canada, and then I can talk a little bit about the plans we have in Sweden.
Yeah, definitely. And Aydin, tell me, how can you generate heat in the arena, for example? But I'm interested to understand how that works.
Yeah, so I can answer that question and also just provide a helpful insight into the funnel of Bitcoin mining. So Bitcoin is an energy-backed currency. And what I mean by that is, when you look at an ASIC miner, right, it looks, it's about that big. It's like a loaf of bread, stainless steel. It's filled with, 300 microchips, ASICs, and fans, and each one is about 3 kilowatts. And so a hairdryer at home is about 1,500 kilowatts. So it uses as much energy as like 2 hairdryers. And so if you put your hand on so it's got an inlet fan and an outlet fan. If you put your hand in front of the outlet fan, you'll feel warm air blowing. Okay. And when you buy these things, they're rated in something called efficiency. The most important thing is the efficiency. What do they measure it in? Joules per terahash. So the input to the machine is joules of energy, and the output of the machine is hash. And hash is directly correlated to the amount of Bitcoin you earn. And so basically, you are consuming 3 kilowatts per machine. And so in our facility, for example, in New Brunswick, we've got about 20,000 machines. So imagine 20,000 hairdryer, actually double that, 40,000 hairdryers just running constantly. But the hairdryer doesn't do anything. It just has a resistive load, a filament that converts, the electricity into heat. The Bitcoin miners, the microchips are processing hash transactions and securing the Bitcoin network. And so they're performing work which has economic value, which is Bitcoin. But that energy gets converted into heat, right? And so what we're doing is all of this huge volume of air that circulates through these machines, which is clean air. There's no pollution added by Bitcoin mining. To be clear, I remember there was a silly article last year. You have all this clean, warm air. And so then what do you do with it? And so what we've done in Lachute, which is in Canada, close to Montreal, is we capture this warm air, and then this warm air is used to warm a heat pump. And that is transferred to an industrial neighbor. It's a 200,000 square foot factory, and they make swimming pools. And so Eastern Canada gets extremely cold in the winter. And so what this does is we're recycling heat that's generated naturally through our operation to our neighbor's facility. So they don't need to buy heat from the grid. So it saves energy. So we're literally recycling it. And then in another manner, in which is the greenhouse project in Sweden, which Johanna has been championing, and we're working with a NASDAQ listed greenhouse developer. We're using an immersion system where the miners actually sit in an immersion fluid, a dielectric, an oil. And so instead of fans blowing air to cool the microchips, the whole system sits in a tank of oil that's non-conductive, which we call dielectric, so that the microchips don't fry, it doesn't short. It's an oil, it's called a dielectric fluid. And then what happens is you circulate the fluid out of that tank, and normally in an immersion system, that circulated oil, dielectric fluid is a proper term, goes through what you call a chiller. And so the heat from that would just naturally evaporate, and then the oil cools down, and you circle it back into the container full of Bitcoin servers. Now you have cool oil coming in, and then the Bitcoin miners warm up that oil, and so you have a loop. However, when we were doing our greenhouse design, we did a few engineering studies last year. You take that heated oil and you apply it into the greenhouse, and that gives the greenhouse the warmth. And again, this is implemented right next to our data center. It's designed. We've gone under engineering, design, development, construction slated for this year. Johanna can provide more details. That heat allows you to grow the vegetables.
Wow.
In the Arctic Circle, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it becomes more economic for the greenhouse provider to grow tomatoes and cucumbers we're talking huge quantities, because it's a 90,000 square foot greenhouse in the first phase of this build out. So it's tons of cucumbers, tons of tomatoes that are going to be grown. And this is done near the Arctic Circle in a more economic way, because it's waste heat, renewable heat than waste heat, rather than in the south of Sweden. And I think this is so interesting, because as Aydin was saying earlier, this is not near the big cities of Göteborg or Stockholm, but it's in the very north of Sweden, where there's actually not the infrastructure of the grids in Sweden are not built out to bring all this renewable energy down to the big cities in the south. But here you have a company, a data center, that is taking care of this energy, helping balance the grid through this, being able to do waste heat projects, and at the same time, being able to finance this infrastructure to build out the grid, so that eventually this immense resource that we have in many countries, also in Canada, in Iceland, you have these rivers and hydro plants far away from the big cities, but you need the capital to be able to build out that infrastructure. And we're paying for it, we're using it. And so I think it's really a win-win that not many people understand and know.
It is really interesting and really fascinating how things can really come together and all help kind of each other and be a part of a puzzle. And I think this is really great, what, the opportunities that Bitcoin mining has got to really contribute to the energy mix. Now, with the approval of the Bitcoin spot ETF, you think that is gonna push for more standard for ESG practices in Bitcoin mining?
I think probably so. I would say so, that from my experience, the funds have their ESG standards, if you will, and so they are gonna require strict standards from the companies that they invest in. I don't know your thinking on that, Aydin.
I think that Bitcoin mining is sort of becoming institutionalized, industrialized, but there's still always a very innovative spirit to it. And so I think that what we're driven by efficiency, even though it is an energy-backed currency. We want to be good, citizens, and either through the advent of hardware where the ASIC chips become more efficient, or you do things like heat recycling. One of the things that we're looking into, in fact, my CTO is looking into carbon recapture, because we move so much air. Is there a way where we can do carbon recapture? So I think that the industry will generally and hopefully trend towards more renewable energy. The Bitcoin Mining Council puts out great statistics. I think almost 65% of the Bitcoin Mining Council is using renewable energy. And Michael Saylor is the chair of that, and they put out great content. And I think the trend is towards more renewable, and I think the trend is to see once a company demonstrates and leads, and HIVE has done that. I think it's natural that other companies will be like, wow, that's a great idea. We should be doing that too. Yeah. But at the same time, Bitcoin is decentralized, so I don't think there will ever be necessarily something you have to do it this way. I think the best companies will want to lead by example, right? And but Bitcoin mining attracts a lot of very, very intelligent people, brilliant engineers, and I think because of the quality of people that this industry has attracted over the years, it's definitely trending in the right direction. And in fact, when you compare it to other industries, we use far more renewable energy. And again, this is when we say use renewable energy, the power producers sell the energy, the utilities sign contracts, like we're their customers. They're like, yeah, great, here, this helps our economic model. And so it's not something where we're coming and taking energy. I also want to make that very clear. Yeah. It's not like Johanna, marched into the head office in Sweden and says, give me all of this. They're like, no, they're like, oh yeah, we'd love to, like it's a very amicable, symbiotic, business relationship we have with the energy producers and utility companies. That's an important point.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I really want to stress on all these aspects of innovation, because, some people are still quite narrow-minded when it comes down to Bitcoin mining. They just think about, Chinese, mafia, Italian. They kind of stereotype the industry, because maybe that was, at the beginning, maybe was more simple, the industry. But nowadays, all this innovation and all this added value that actually the industry is bringing, I want to share it, and I think it's so important that more people talk about it, and what you're doing is brilliant. Now, I want to cover AI as well, because I know that, you mentioned it a few times, and there is a lot of thinking around how actually AI can drive crypto mining. So perhaps, Aydin, you want to shed some light, tell us a little bit more to how this AI technology can help your industry.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this topic because we've been spending a lot of effort building this business unit within HIVE. And I think it's worth noting, as Johanna mentioned earlier, we started as an Ethereum miner. In fact, we were one of the world's largest Ethereum miners. At the peak, we were running 150,000 GPUs. We were over 1% of the network. We had over 20 megawatts of GPUs running at our facility in northern Sweden. That is an important statistic, and here's why. People have heard of a 10, a 20, 30, 40, 50 megawatt Bitcoin mine, but Ethereum mines were not typical because most Ethereum miners were hobby miners still mining on their laptop with a GPU, and that never really went away. Whereas Bitcoin became more industrialized quicker, especially with the advent of ASIC technology, right? And so, moreover, one thing you can directly compare, Ethereum would generate roughly 4 times on average. I mean, it varied with time, but roughly 4 times the revenue per kilowatt that Bitcoin mining generated, right? So it's more profit dense per kilowatt mining Ethereum, okay? And so we saw that business case, and we saw the value arbitrage. And so Ethereum was a very high margin business for us, right? Our NVIDIA GPUs, just to put some numbers around it, our NVIDIA GPUs were doing 90 cents a kilowatt hour of revenue, during the bull market. Our older generation cards were still doing about 45 to 50 cents a kilowatt hour, when Bitcoin mining was doing, maybe 20 cents a kilowatt hour, right? And by the way, Bitcoin mining now is in the 10 to 15 cent range, and this is coming out of the bear market. In the bear market, we were in the 5 to 10 cent range, depending on the efficiency of your ASIC chip, right? So I'm giving you a snapshot in time a couple years ago. Johanna, you and I were in Dubai, and we were in that Uber together with one of our site captains. And anyway, so we were going over these calculations with our chairman, Frank. And so, at that time, you were seeing Ethereum mining have 4 times the revenue. And the thing is, the cost is the same, but the revenue is so much more higher. So your profit margins are even bigger in Ethereum. Now, what happened at the merge, right? When Ethereum went to proof of stake? Well, everybody said, oh my God, that's it. Hive's in trouble. Here's what actually happened. Crypto mining is asymptotic in nature. And what I mean is, it's a principle in mathematics, right? If you have the function 1 over x, it can approach 0, but it never actually hits 0. It gets closer and closer and closer, but it takes longer and longer and longer. So it's just sort of like this, right? And so there's these asymptotes that exist. For example, we had the most efficient GPUs for mining Ethereum, the NVIDIA fleet. They also had potential for AI. We also had extremely attractive power prices. So when the merge happened, we were able to pivot our GPUs to mining other altcoins, namely Ethereum Classic and about half a dozen others. And we had a profit switching algorithm. And I know one of your questions is about AI and mining. And so probably the closest thing to that is to think about how we had a dynamic algorithm that would switch daily, that would switch between different altcoins, GPU mineable altcoins specifically, right? Because there's some coins that you can mine with GPUs. And so our GPUs would pivot between these different coins for the ones that were the most profitable. And what happened was, we were doing about 70% of what Bitcoin mining ASICs were doing at that moment in time. When was that moment in time? October 2022, right after the Ethereum merge. And everyone thought, oh, it's going to go to 0. No. It will drop. The hash power will spill to other coins. The difficulty of those coins will increase. Margins will thin out, but it doesn't go to 0. And in fact, for us, we were able to maintain about 70% right after the merge. And actually, throughout 2023, there was periods when our GPUs were earning more per kilowatt hour than Bitcoin mining, right? So everything in crypto mining is fluid. All the hash rate economics vary on each coin, and so it's like a symphony of different numbers, and we're constantly measuring this and optimizing. Now, I'm just telling you about the whole crypto mining with GPUs. And so when we got into AI, we realized, okay, there's an emergent technology here. The bricks, the foundation, if you will, is called HPC, high performance computing. And so we said, okay, we've got our GPUs now that are running in standard servers, which we could mine Ethereum and altcoins with. But if we want to take it to the next level and have our GPUs do high performance computing, we had to upgrade the infrastructure that they operated in, okay? So what do I mean by infrastructure? The infrastructure is the whole thing. It's the physical server where you have a CPU, a computing processing unit, RAM, storage, just like your home computer, but like a supercomputer, basically. And so, because the GPUs don't work on their own, they're just cards. You have to plug them in a motherboard, right? So we had them in a standard motherboard, which was just great for mining Ethereum. But we want to take it to the next level. We put them in these super micro servers, which are kind of like supercomputers. And it really supercharged the ability of the GPUs to do so much more. And so that is what kicked off our migration into high performance computing. So just imagine you have these GPUs in a standard server. You physically move the GPUs into what we call an enterprise grade server, and we partner with Supermicro, and they're a publicly traded company in the US. They've got about a market cap of $15 billion. And then with that, we migrated the entire server into racks in a tier 3 data center, which again is different than a crypto mining data center. And so through the course of 2023, we saw our revenue go from $250,000 a quarter to $250,000 a month. And now we've eclipsed that. We're about 400,000 a month. Our next benchmark is $250,000 a week. And towards the end of 2024, we hope to be $250,000 a day. And so we put out a press release recently that our target for the end of this quarter is going to be about 25 million of annualized revenue. So we're accomplishing this. We have a tier 3 in Quebec and a tier 3 in Sweden, of course. And it's dynamic. It's why I was a few minutes late for our interview today. We have a team of experts that transcend software, networking, hardware, AI, and LLM training, and it's very multidisciplinary. It's very, very exciting. So that's kind of the technology part of it. And then on the business side of it, the nice thing about doing HPC computing with GPUs is the revenue is upwards of $2 a kilowatt hour. So put that into perspective. Bitcoin mining 10 to 15 cents per kilowatt hour, right? Today. Ethereum mining with these same NVIDIA GPUs was about 90 cents a kilowatt hour, okay? But doing HPC, $2 a kilowatt hour, right? Yeah. So you're almost 20 times the revenue per kilowatt hour with HPC, especially with AI demand. And the demand is coming from AI, right? Like everybody wants to, run inference on models, train models, etc. And so then and people say, okay, but you're running out of tier 3, it's more expensive. Okay, so even if a tier 3, I'm going to use example numbers, is 30 cents a kilowatt hour, but you're earning $2 a kilowatt hour, what's your profit margin? $1.70 a kilowatt hour. If you're earning 10 cents a kilowatt hour mining Bitcoin, but your cost is 5 cents a kilowatt hour because, crypto data is run as cheap as possible, what's your profit? Well, it's 10 cents minus 5 cents. It's still 5 cents, okay? Yeah. So your profit margin mining crypto is 5 cents. Your profit margin doing HPC is $1.70. That's over 30 times, right?
Can I ask you a dumb question? When I think about AI and I think about a machine that is using AI, I'm thinking about more energy needed for it. So how that works?
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. I've given you pretty specific numbers, but for your viewers who walk away from this interview, a really simple way to put it, right? If you want to do $100 million of revenue, we can accomplish that. All our 38,000 NVIDIA GPUs, if they were repurposed for HPC, would use 10 megawatts for $100 million. If you want to get $100 million with Bitcoin mining, you're going to need 100 megawatts. Yeah. So you could say it's one-tenth the energy needed, right? It's not nearly as energy intensive. Still energy intensive, but not as much as Bitcoin mining. But they're two different businesses, right? Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, Bitcoin is great. It's an energy-backed currency. That gives it intrinsic value. That gives it security, right? Yeah. But AI and HPC, it's still energy intensive, but an order of magnitude less. And it's also fixed margin, right? Like we can get 1 year or 2 year contracts with our GPs. We also do hourly and weekly renting. It's higher margins, but all of this is these are fixed rates. It's not as volatile as Bitcoin mining, which kind of is like that day by day, week by week. You see Bitcoin mining economics fluctuate so much. This is a great hedge for HIVE because now we have a high margin, 80% margin business that's fixed going into the Bitcoin halving event, right? So as we grow the GPU revenue stream, right, 25 million annual revenue target for end of Q1, calendar Q1, going towards 100 million to the end of the year. Again, that's our target. As that grows and that stable fixed income, when there's a dip after the halving event at the end of April, it allows us opportunistically to buy assets in the Bitcoin mining business at compressed prices. Because you have to be very savvy when you expand in Bitcoin mining and make sure that you lock in your asset purchases for the cheapest price possible so you can ROI on them. Because in crypto mining, if you don't ROI on your investment, you're just better off buying Bitcoin. Like if you spend $10 million buying ASICs and you run them for 3 years, but you only make back $7 million or $8 million, well, you haven't even made money on your investment. Yeah. And we measure that at HIVE. Like we focus on best cash flow return on invested capital. We're not the biggest. We just focus on the best ROI. Because otherwise, what's the point? Like, it's not a sustainable business, right? But a lot of public companies just keep raising money. And, the investing public is just focused on the future, looking at growth. But they don't say, oh, wow, this company's diluted itself by 300% the last year or two. So that's kind of one very peculiar thing about publicly traded American Bitcoin mining companies. But it is what it is. We just want to deliver value for our shareholders first and foremost. And Johanna, would you add anything to that?
No, I think that's perfectly summarizing the situation.
I love adding value to shareholder. That's just so important. Generating value to shareholder. I think, many companies should go back to the mission they are on, because, I think sometimes you get dragged away. Are you scared about quantum computing?
No, I think it's cool. I mean, we're far off for the number of qubits that you'd need to break the elliptical curve. So basically, the Bitcoin secured by a nested SHA-256 hashing algorithm, right? So SHA-256 was developed by the NSA, right? And Bitcoin uses a nested SHA-256 hash algorithm. So in order to have a quantum computer, you measure the quantum computer also number of bits, right? And so 2-bit, 4-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit, etc., up to 1024 bits and more on. And I think you need to have about 1024 qubits or before you would be able to crack, the Bitcoin SHA-256. But that's sort of like, I mean, people come up with these sort of doomsday scenarios. Well, when we invented the nuclear bomb, are we going to destroy the entire Earth? You know what I mean? I think that there's a lot, and you could look at, there's Shor's algorithm and Grover's theorem, and there are mathematicians that have looked into it, but we're so far off from that happening. And there's other applications of quantum computing that I think are much better. And I believe that the Bitcoin community would embrace that technology and see how it could actually further strengthen the blockchain, rather see it as a risk of, Bitcoin's, we're kind of going into our 15th year here, and we've seen massive advancements in computing. So I embrace technology. I'm an engineer though, so maybe.
No, it's a great answer. It's a great answer. I think, rather than falling into the stereotype, thinking, the big monster that is coming to destroy the world is actually can become useful as well and should be embraced. And definitely is going to bring value anyway. And like you said, we are still far down the line with those kind of technology evolution anyway. Aydin, Johanna, it was great to have you back on the show. I think we have learned so much today from, what you're doing, how important ESG, and Aydin, you always have got some amazing insight to share with us. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.